Mute your phones if you haven't already, gentlemen.
Okay.
So good evening. Today is the 30th of March, 2026. One more day left in the National Reading Month. But National Reading Month is something I treat no different than I treat Black History Month. I feel it's a 365, 24/7 endeavor. So don't let April 1st be the end of reading, because it's very important that we stay reading on a regular basis in order to gain knowledge, because knowledge is power and education is the key. And you get that education and knowledge through the course of reading regularly, and not just reading to read, but reading to learn, reading to comprehend, and also reading to understand. So with me tonight, I have my co-host, Dr. Semino Scott, and he has an amazing story because his tagline is from, pretty much the streets to a PhD. So he has a very impressive story to tell. I also have Nate Wissett, who I've known for a few years now. And Nate is in the education field, been there for 30 years. He goes by Coach Nate, as well as Coach Derek Hines. Both go by the moniker Coach in front of their names. Derek Hines goes by Coach or the Coach. And Nate goes by Coach Nate Wissett. And again, Nate, 30 years of experience dedicated to his career of empowering youth through innovative strategies and dynamic engagement. Coach Hines, Coach D, is a youth success coach, developer, author, and founder with over 30 years of experience empowering students, athletes, families, educator teams. He also helps learn to build strong academic foundations with lasting success habits through clear, practical, and engaging tools and strategies. And last, I have Hamir Johnson, a journey of transformation, leadership, and purpose. Hamir's journey began in Detroit, where he was raised by his resilient mother. Growing up and exploring his environment through sports, mischief, and curiosity, he developed a passion for self-improvement that he now channels into physical training and chess. Hamir has lived in 2 states and visited 25 of the 50 states in this country, but his heart remains in Detroit. And after 15 years of seeking his life purpose, he shifted toward deeper meaning. Now an entrepreneur and community leader, he coaches youth sports, trains clients, volunteers with groups like Brilliant Detroit, supports local campaigns, and works in real estate. As Hamir joined us on the podcast and is featured on our platform, I cannot be prouder to induce someone I only deeply admire, but truly want to see succeed. So with that being said, I want to welcome my 3 guests as well as my co-hosts, because it's very important we have a conversation about literacy, particularly as it relates to people that look like us. And that people that look like us is not the women, because they are doing some amazing things. It is the Black young men, as well as seasoned Black men, that are the ones that continue to be at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to literacy, reading proficiency, and just educational outcomes. So with that being said, let me bring Dr. Scott into the conversation, because he has a very interesting story, and one that I think should actually be made into a movie, because for him to have such a great story to tell is more than a motivation. And I was not able to make it to the event on Friday, Dr. Scott. That was Friday, right? Out in Pontiac?
Yeah, but we have another one coming up. I'll share it with you.
Okay, yeah, definitely keep me abreast of that. So just give the audience a little bit of your background. This is your second time on my show. Previously, you were a guest. This time, you're co-hosting with me. But before I go further, let me, welcome into the conversation, at least visiting as way of viewership. I have Latoya Turner, and she is the founder of Brown Hand Literacy. Has a great initiative going on in Cincinnati, Ohio. She's a graduate of an HBCU, Central State in Ohio, as well as looks like her mom is joining the program as well. They both say hello. Her mom has a book out that I think numerous people need to check out, because it's a great story of not just perseverance, but resilience, as well as motivation for people to understand how to not let a bad circumstance define your life. So with that being said, a good segue for you, Dr. Scott, because you had a circumstance that took you from the streets to a PhD.
Yeah, well, to your point, Eric, at 16, I was arrested selling drugs like so many young black men growing up in the city of Pontiac and Detroit, for that matter, in the 80s. My story really is one from juvenile detention to a PhD to a leadership role at Children's Village now as an adult. And, what I've learned over time through my engagement with community-based organizations, my role as a board member at Habitat or at Oakland Livingston Human Service Agency, which really is one of the key agencies that focuses on Head Start. What we see with our young black males, as early as preschool, we are behind in reading. And then when we catch them as teenagers, for my example at Children's Village, we know that the majority of our young men that come to us are behind in not just reading, but school in general, 2 to 3 years behind in some instances. And as black men, one of the things that we have to grapple with is that nationwide, only 2% of our teachers are men of color. So the whole educational pathway is something that we have to begin to address as men and not looking for other people to address that for us.
And that's a very good perspective. And, let me move on to Nate, who's currently in the educational system and sees a lot of what we deal with. Last week on my show, I talked about a kindergartner who is 7-8 weeks removed from moving on to the first grade that cannot even count to 20. I also mentioned about a junior in high school, 7-8 weeks away from being a senior in high school that has a 0. Not a 0.75, but a 0.57 GPA. So the question, you're in education, Nate, how is it that someone can be passed along all these years, currently a little bit more than a year away from becoming an adult per se, since once you graduate from high school, you're an adult, and only has a 0.57 GPA. I mean, is that the educational system? Is that the parents? Is that the village? Or is it that person that just does not have the educational or the cognitive issues to deal with K through 12 traditional education?
Man, Eric, this is a deep conversation, and it's been going on. It's frustrating. It's just really, to have to actually be on the front lines and seeing it as it goes. A lot of times, where the student is, we get them where they are, and they come in, but we have the curriculum, which is really frustrating, because if you have to go through this process, you got companies making millions and millions of dollars to try to teach kids to read. And I'm sure as well with the Right to Read documentary, a lot of money has been spent, but no results. Zero. A lot of results where kids and that's not just black kids.
Oh, right.
This is across the, and it's really it's frustrating. And I actually had written a book to kind of map out a lot of it. This book is about a girl who made it to the 4th grade without learning to read. It's entitled The Answer, Building Relationships and finding purpose and building relationships in the classroom. It takes those relationships. It takes time making connections with the parents. You got to get buy-in from the parents, got to get buy-ins from the student. And then you have to really, really take your time and create. I mean, something that students are interested in and finding their interest. Because if you can't tap into what they're interested in, you're fighting a losing battle, because you can be teaching that curriculum that you've been handed, like two worlds coming together combined, and that kid is looking out of the window or looking in the hallway to see who just went outside to ask, could he go to the bathroom?
And I'm glad you mentioned the book, Nate, because I actually edited my first book ever today. A friend of mine that is writing a book, and she asked me to give it a review and edit it. And it's going to be a very successful series that she has come up with. So I'm going to give a shout out to Kristen Adams for what she's doing to ensure that the future generation has an easy read to get them accustomed to understanding, not just consonant, not just vowels, verbs, adjectives, but just a simple read that that's all it takes. And I keep telling people, you know, you are aware of the 5K events I've done. Lisa and Ernesto out in the Ann Arbor area have been very, very supportive of my initiative and providing me with books. And I will never forget 3 years ago, an event I held at Wayne State University. And this is one of those moments that I kick myself often when I talk about it, because it's something that cannot be duplicated. You know, as I'm talking to one of my fraternity brothers at the booth, we hear this young lady crying. And I think I shared this story with you, Hamir, as well as Coach D. I'm like, okay, are you okay? What's going on? This is a 10th grader, very well read, very well spoken. Her mom was working on her master's at Wayne State University in education. And she was simply crying, brothers, because she said, I've never seen so many books with people that look like me on the cover. That right there was an amazing moment. And you also brought up the right to read. A story from that, Kareem Weaver, who was very prominent in the producing of that documentary, me and him were on a webinar back in 2021. And he spoke about how, and this is going to hit you, I'm not sure if you all have daughters, but he spoke about how his daughter came home from school one day and was like, Dad, my teacher was saying how 75% of Black boys are not reading at grade level. Baby girl, you know, your teacher is right. Her response, brothers, was, how am I going to find a husband?
Wow.
With me and him being the only Black men on the webinar, I didn't say shit. I just like, hey, I'm not the answer man for the Black community. So I just kept my quiet. But that was just so profound. And having a Black daughter, I can relate to a father being asked that question by his Black daughter after being told by an educator what the situation was regarding Black boys. And the statistics that she provided came from 2017. She mentioned to her dad in 2021. But lo and behold, 5 years later, from 2017 to 2022, 75% of Black boys and Black and brown boys in California were not reading at grade level. So that's 5 years later. So that just shows you how much of a predicament we are in as Black men. And we need to understand that. And before I go to you, Coach D, let me acknowledge some of our other viewers. Mr. 1213, good evening. Thanks for joining us. A regular viewer on the Detroit and Black and White platform. Lisa, I just mentioned Lisa and her husband, Ernesto. Thanks for joining us this evening. Lisa, Miss Sheila, a regular viewer of the platform, Detroit and Black and White. And excuse me, Donnie AB Num 4909, if I pronounced it wrong, my apologies, but welcome for joining us this evening and appreciate all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. So with that being said, you know, Coach D, I got involved with you by you reaching out to me. You know, I guess that was a testament of appreciation of what I've been doing in the community when it comes to literacy. So I appreciate that. And then we spoke the other day. It was a brief phone call that turned into, I think, an hour and a half. You know, and I just, listened to your commitment. It was no different than the conversation I recently had with Brother Johnson. We touched bases through a mutual friend. And once you get involved with someone that understands the fight, you could be on the phone for 2-3 hours easily. So with that being said, learning more about you, even from the time you first reached out to me, I've been beyond impressed with what you're doing and trying to do. So what do you think needs to be done as it relates to something that's very fixable? And not just very fixable, easily fixable. All we need to do is look to Mississippi to find out how fixable the problem is.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thanks for having me. And, It's great to be on this show with you brothers, talking about something that is, just, super important. And, just to answer your question, what do I think? A few things. One of the main things that I've seen, because I've been out of school system for what, 3 years, almost 3 years now, and working with my daughter with a educational materials company called Sat Holistic. Um, and we produce tools that help kids learn the fundamentals, arithmetic, word building, sentence structure. Um, like you said, the fixes are simple. They take a lot of commitment and a lot of thought and a lot of strategy. And the problem is, I think one of the biggest problems is that a lot of the people who can help are kind of detached. I mean, a lot of our peers would help, but they're not really connected to this problem like they think, then they don't feel that they're connected to this problem. Um, I don't see kids who can't read every day trying to read. When I was in the school system, Cornerstone, uh, one of their schools, one of the things that well, we had a population that really half of the kids literally could not read at a fourth or fifth grade level in seventh and eighth grade. Um, they were neighborhood kids. They they had a lot of trauma going on. So you can blame the parents, but that doesn't save the child. Um, we have to have these fail-safe strategies inside the school that takes account that the parent may not be an ideal parent for helping with homework, or or also takes in account that having 50% of the kids who can't read up to school level or more, um, we have to take into account that um, that that we have we that tools are put in place, that everything is put in place for them to succeed. So I just think that um, from an outside standpoint, most of our peers don't see that. They're focused on their kids, their own family, and most of our again, most of our peers, our children are in private schools. They're not in public schools. If they are, they're probably in Bates or Flicks or Cass or Renaissance. So we don't get to see the depth of these numbers are, I don't know how accurate they are, but I can tell you what, our kids need a lot of help. Our kids need a lot of help with reading and writing. And if they're not reading and writing um, on by the time they get out of middle school at an eighth grade, seventh grade level, then they're in trouble. And trust me, they're not, as you know, they're not reading at that level. They're reading at a fourth, third grade level. And that's pretty much what I see in the neighborhoods. And the what we have to do, just like the brother said, we have to take accountability uh, individually. We have to take accountability. If you see these numbers and hear these numbers, then you have to take some accountability for that, because these numbers have been like this, like we were talking about, Eric, for years and years. We've been dealing with literacy numbers that are super low in Detroit. That's all our fault. So I'm just, that was kind of what we were talking about. I'm gonna do what I have to do. I'm gonna do something to impact that. I can't go out, without impacting these numbers.
Right. And then there'll also be comments that I'll be throwing up throughout the, you're going to also see them yourselves, but I'll be throwing out. And then Ms. Sheila spoke to, we must focus on children's interests, which will motivate children's interests, not just corporation curriculum, truthy. When you read that statement, Brother Johnson, what goes through your mind? What do you think needs to be done to address the interests of children to get them more involved and engaged to want to read?
All right. Well, hello again. My name is Javier Johnson. Can you all hear me clearly? Can you hear me?
Well, we hear you, but it's very low. See if you could put your mic more towards.
All right. What about now?
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, to start, I just want to say thank you, of course, for having me on. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to hear other voices that are in the same space, fighting the same battle, and more importantly, add mine to the mix to not only say that, I agree with accountability, but the next step from there is that we need to take action, right? With that, to talk to that comment specifically, I have daughters myself, right? I have 2 daughters. I have twins. And I was fortunate enough to see both of them progress over the years and see their character development, right? And I was able to see firsthand how what they saw me do, what they saw their mother do, what they saw their grandparents do, what they saw their aunts do, all of that plays a factor. And so one thing that you brought up earlier, which was said about community, I believe that for children, their immediate community is their first interest, no matter what it is that you do. So therefore, as the leaders or necessarily the adults that are in place, we need to be the first example that they see that is actively engaged in learning, engaged in bettering ourselves. So therefore, they can pick up that note and utilize it.
And that's a very interesting point, Brother Johnson, because, the first teacher, it is said, is the parent. But I also want to piggyback on something that I can remember, it was you, Nate, or if it was you, Coach D, that said it. Oftentimes when I'm giving a speech or asked to speak about literacy, I use the Dr. Martin Luther King quote, "You cannot ask a bootless man to lift himself up by the bootstraps." Under that same token, we all understand a lot of these parents are not capable of being there to assist their children with the educational process once they leave that school. So with that being said, yes, it should start at home, and that's the caveat I always state. It should start at home. But we have to also understand and be real and keep it 100 that a lot of these parents are not capable through the educational process that they went through to be able to assist their children. So I got first involved with literacy after reading about a 12th grader at Detroit Central High School that was reading at a first grade level. That young man went through Beyond Basics, an organization that similar to Brilliant Detroit. He became, after he learned how to read, he became his mom's tutor. So let that sink in. This young man was reading at the first grade level, became his mom's tutor, and not just taught his mom how to read, but also taught his siblings. And this was only, less than 9 years ago. So this is a state of dynamics. And when we talk about things like this, like today, yesterday, today, all weekend long, everybody is whining about Bella being possibly bought in a $1 billion investment. That's low hanging fruit. When a news article talks about a 12th grader when a school district is sued by students that actually sued the state of Michigan, and there's a deafening silence, that's where the problem lies. The problem lies with the village. Because when those students sued the state of Michigan for a quality education, the sad part about it, brothers, is that they were represented by a lawyer from thousands of miles away in California. So there was not a lawyer here in the Detroit area felt that black kids deserve a quality education in Detroit. That a lawyer out of the state of California, who also has his own problems with reading proficiency with black people, had to take on the case. And even to this day, Nate, we don't know how that $94 million settlement is being spent.
Right.
But those are the types of issues that people need to be focusing on instead of worrying about the Lions winning the Super Bowl. $1 billion investment in Belle Isle. That's low-hanging fruit. But we get easily distracted by stuff we don't have control over. But what we do have control over is things that we can control. And we can control and fix the educational problem impacting black people in urban communities in Michigan. Mississippi proved it. They went from 49 in the country educational outcomes to 19. Michigan is currently in the bottom 10 at number 44. But there's a deafening silence. Hell, you can walk into any church in Detroit and ask about literacy. Nobody will answer. But one thing you will hear is probably a church mouse pissing on the cotton ball. You know, so I mean, it's a reality. It's a sad reality, but people got, I mean, the boots on the ground, people have to get involved. They have to get their hands dirty. People want to sit back and complain about, you know, who doing what, who's the leaders. Well, we don't have any leaders in the metropolitan Detroit area. None. Now they won. You know, anyone you can chime in at any point.
Well,
I mean, it's a systemic problem. It's just deeply rooted, you know. And I tell the kids all the time, I mean, even from a historical perspective, you got coming out that like you could be murdered for trying to read, or somebody catch you reading, you in trouble. So you go from no, you cannot read, it's against the law for you to read, and you're gonna have problems to deal with if we find out that you are trying to read, to now we want you to read. And you need to have these test scores here. And, you know, the mixed messages that's been sent are ongoing. Now, I wasn't fortunate enough to have girls. I was blessed to have boys, young men. And what I purposely did was every summer, though during that time when we all were out for school, it was library tours. I take the GPS, plug it in. Okay, we're going to go to Novi's library. Get our library card here. We go to this library. Redford, all over the school, all over the metro Detroit metro area. We riding around going to libraries. They getting on the computers. They getting their books. They sitting and reading. So it was a intentional thing for me because I didn't know the numbers of who wasn't reading at the time, but I just knew that I couldn't allow that to happen on my watch. And I'll stop right there.
Coach D or Nate, you know, this current comment that's up here, teachers are spending more time being distracted by behavior issues. Most teachers without special need background are not equipped. Sad but true. Most teachers teach their beliefs. And, you know, even Brother Johnson or Dr. Scott, you know, either one of you want to take this comment and chime in on it?
Gotta unmute yourself, brother.
You're on mute, Dr. Scott.
Yeah, thank you. So I definitely want to jump in here because when I was doing a pilot study on Black male academic motivation, and I interviewed a young man who I knew was having trouble in school. And I just asked directly, why do you think you have so much trouble in school? And he looked at me, and I wasn't prepared, guys, for his answer. He said, because I can't read that well, I act out so the teacher won't call on me. And what happens in my experience, working in a high school for 4 years, If I have to take a kid's phone, that parent will be at that school before the end of the day. But if I call about grades, I may not get a return call. So I heard several of you guys mention today accountability. But then I heard you say we can't put it on the parents. So I'm hoping that someone can elaborate on that a bit more, because to me, as Eric indicated, the first teacher of our kids are the parents. And if we're not reading to our kids at home, if we're not helping them establish libraries, then we are part of the problem instead of the solution.
You brought up a great point. Before I go to you, Doctor. Before I go to you, Coach D, you brought up a great point, because you're right. You take a phone from a child, that parent is up there quicker than a Jimmy John's delivery person. But you call them to come to parent-teacher conference, you might as well send a one of them ravens, one of them honey birds, because that's the best you can do as far as trying to get in touch with them. That's a problem. Coach D.
Yeah. So I worked with special ed students, actually working with them. It was a general ed. They were all in general education. So that put me in each of the classes. So I was in classes from K through 8, seeing hundreds of kids every day. And to speak to the point about the parents, Doc, you had asked the question, what about holding them accountable? I agree that they should be held accountable. But what I did recognize in those situations, because it was a whole lot of behavioral issues, because a lot of kids could not read, to piggy on your point. But what I would do, and I wasn't required to do it, but what I would do is I would talk to the kid, get their parents' phone number. This is just me in that situation. And I would call the parents and talk to them. And I know that will be a problem a lot of times for the women teachers, but for me as a male teacher, a lot of times I was invited more into a chat with a parent. So I did get results when I called the parent. I think a lot of teachers don't call parents. I think a lot of teachers don't email parents and keep them up on what's going on. And I think the schools a lot of times don't focus on just what you said. The kids who can't read, the kids who are way behind. You have to have some special strategies for them. You can't just leave them in the class and let them, while out. And that's what they're doing. So.
Then Lisa has a question. I mean, I'll get to you in a minute, Brother Johnson. Lisa has a comment about an organization in New York City called NYC Men Teach. It is specifically designed to support and recruit Black people of color, male teachers. This type of organization could be helpful here. Actually, Lisa, there's a similar organization here called the BMEA, originally called the Black Male Education Alliance, but now they have changed their name to Boldly Moving Education Ahead, and they have also opened up a new school. This school year, 25-26 is the first year for their school. They had a summer pilot program that was very successful. Now they have a full-fledged school. So with that being said, and we touched upon this briefly, Brother Johnson, last Thursday. What would be your vision for seeing more Black males involved to shift the paradigm when it comes to moving us, and I say us, I'm a Black male, moving us from the bottom of the totem pole to the top of the totem pole?
Well, that's a great question, and I feel as if it deserves a great answer. To start with that answer, I believe that we have to first address the mentality that we have, which is very dogmatic when it comes to dealing with one another versus looking at each other as collaborators, as family, as a unit, right? And in that sense, once you realize that when my brother wins, I win. When I win, my brother wins. And that goes for my brother that's 5 years old, that goes for my brother that's 80 years old. We're all brothers, we're all in the same fight, right? So it starts with that accountability for us to say our future matters, right? It's not just today. I believe that for the way in which I got into this, of course, it started with my own children, but it further expounded from there in the sense that when you think about today, I'm living, I'm alive, and the actions that I do today are going to either have a positive result or a negative result that I'm going to have to live with. And, by God's grace, if I see tomorrow, I need to make the choices today count so that I have a better tomorrow, right? So again, having that framework in my mind, that gives me the thought process to say that I need to make sure that not only am I okay, but I need to make sure that my brother is okay. And if my brother is failing, let's say in this area here, in which I know is the reason for my success, because again, if I couldn't read, well, what is the famous saying? They say if you want to hide something from someone, put it in a book, right?
Well, actually, they say you want to hide something from black people, put it in the book.
Okay. Well, there it is. It's a matter of proving that stereotype right. I feel like should be every black person's like that should be like just a driving factor and force that how many books have been published, right? Let's start there. How many books have been published? It's free information. You can walk into
Right.
any library and get free knowledge that can better your life, right? And I think that it comes back to, it comes full circle to the distraction. It comes back to the culture that has been set before us by the powers that be, the powers that don't want to see us go further than where we are. And I believe that it's systematically placed, as in, I watched a brief article talking about the Huxtable effect, right? Back in the 90s when Bill had his show, and the fact that Morehouse saw an increase in enrollment, right? I believe it was over 30% increase in enrollment. And then also, as far as black males graduating from high school, I believe it was around 75%, 80%. With that being said, you have the transition, 10, 20 years, and you have the music, right? You have the Lil Wayne era, so to say, right? And you saw a drastic decline under 50% when it came to graduation, right? You saw a drastic decline when it came to actual college enrollment. And I think that these are things in which when you have media, and I guess let me just bring this into one focal point. You have a family that's already separated, right? The only other thing in which these children are absorbing is what's left in the house. It's a black screen that has a source, right? It has some sort of knowledge. It has some sort of projection coming through it, and they're absorbing that. So I believe that, and this is where my company was born, but it's a matter of we have to produce now positive media that portrays not only us, but portrays these children as things that they can be. Give them positive imagery that says you don't have to be just A, B, and C. There's 1,000 more options out there that you can choose from. And better yet, you might actually love to do just that. You might actually love to be in a rocket scientist. I met a brother at 313 Reads, I want to say 2 weeks ago, where I went and I read to a third grade classroom. I met a brother in whom was so fascinated. He was an electrician. Let me say that first. But he was fascinated with giving children the spark to excite them about life and what you can create. And through his craft of being an electrician, he brought several things in which I'm 32. I was amazed. I said, you need a show. Because I immediately went to thinking, like, I thought, like, this is like Bill Nye, the science guy. Like, are literally coming and blowing my mind with things that I would have never thought of to create. But again, to take that to a 7-year-old, to take that to an 11-year-old, and for them to see this and to see that you are somebody that they can be, right? Like, it's not out of reach. It's not untouchable. We just need to have an actual presence, and then more importantly, operate in our best ability, right? We need to pursue whatever it is that makes us happy so they can see that it's possible. That's
a very interesting point, Brother Johnson, because Dr. Scott, you live in Oakland County.
Yes, sir.
A way predominantly white county. When you were in, was it Boysville? Is that what it's called up there, the Youth Detention Center?
Children's Village.
Children's Village. So when you were there, how many people, juveniles, look like you in a predominantly white county as a whole? Can you recall what the percentage of black youth were that were there?
Well, the majority at the time I was a resident there were black children. As an administrator there today, the majority are black children. And while Oakland County is a predominantly white county, the majority of those residents come from the city of Pontiac, which is a majority black community. And so definitely the racial ethnic disparities exist in the juvenile detention facility. They exist in the suspension rates of our high school. They exist in the suspension rates of our elementary school. So it is a real systemic pattern that starts in the community, then the school, and then certainly in detention.
Wow. And that's no different than, we only make up 12, 13, no more than 14% of the population, but our prisons are filled with people that look like us to the rate of about 48, 47%. That is interesting. But I think, someone said it earlier, misery is profitable. And when I say misery, I'm referring to the miseducation. I'm referring to the abject poverty. I'm referring to the homelessness. I'm referring to poverty in general. That's misery, and it's profitable, and that's unfortunate. And let me acknowledge some of these other viewers, because without them, I would not be able to do this show. Jennifer Nelson, thanks for joining us this evening. Tamika Rainey, she's joining us. She has a very interesting comment as well. And her comment is simple. Start by encouraging kids to read what interests them. Anybody want to chime in on that comment?
That's what I said at the start. You got to tag, you got to pull them in where they are. You got to get them where they are, pull them in. And once they start showing that interest, then you have to be, as an educator or that person, individual that's in front of them, be that spark for them. Spark it. Once it's lit, then it can take off, But until you can get them interested, I was in the classroom trying to teach the curriculum, and we talking about geysers in the western part of the state. Some of the kids haven't even been on the west side from the east side. So now I'm sitting there trying to explain this to them. Then I just stopped mid-sentence and say, okay, let's talk Belle Isle. So then that kind of got them going. Oh, I know where that's at. I've been there before. We had a family reunion at Belle Isle. Okay, now let's bring it together and pull it together and push it from there.
And you got to meet them where they are at. So you're right, Nate. And Nate or Coach D, you both have experience in the school system. I Am Brittany Alexis brings up a great point. This is good. I'm assuming she's referring to this show tonight, the topic. Children absorb everything. They need a better system, one that evolves with the times and actually supports how they learn today. That is a spot on commentary, because with anything, you can't teach about what's going on today. It's no different than if someone that's serving 25 years in jail were to walk out of prison tomorrow. It's a completely different world than what it was when he went into jail. And that's how teaching has to take place. You can't teach. Well, there's that new math that is ridiculous to me. you could get the right answer, but your son or daughter would get the question wrong, even though they got the right answer because they didn't work out the problem the way this new math works.
That's crazy.
So I dealt with that with my kids. I'm like, hold on, how in the hell is it wrong, but the answer is right? Well, you didn't follow the format. No, I followed the format for how I understand math. So it don't make no sense. You carrying numbers to the right instead of to the left. I'm like, hold on, how in the hell does that work? That's not how math worked back in the day. So yeah, Brittany, Alexis, thanks for that comment because you hit the nail right on the head. You got to teach them the way that they see the world. And even with Quam Nellums, he speaks from a perspective of how kids understand things nowadays. Fortunately, unfortunately, how you feel about social media, but a lot of what they are learning, a lot of what they're paying attention to is coming from social media. TikTok is their Bible.
That's it. Now, their news comes from TikTok. I'm like,
their news comes from TikTok. I mean, hell, social media did it. Social media, I mean, it's not getting political, but social media did a polling for 2028 presidential candidates from the left and from the right. The two people that came out on top, AOC for the left, Erica Kirk for the right. How in the hell, again, but that's their space.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Go ahead, Coach D.
I agree that the systems need to be upgraded. I mean, it's plain to see. You have, for instance, Cass Tech has the same mission statement as DPS CD, which is, I guess that wouldn't be a big problem, but DPS CD's mission statement is kind of vague and not focused, in my opinion. So my point is, what are the standards for the community for these schools? These schools are not, the goals are not high enough. When you just looking for a 5% increase from, let's give them a higher grade than they deserve, a 20% proficiency. That's 25% proficiency in 5 years or whatever they're shooting for. I need to see much higher goals. I would like to see the superintendent of Detroit shooting for highly effective. Otherwise, then that's a problem. So,
well, not to cut you off, Coach D, but it speaks to last August when the M-STEP scores came out. There's an increase of less than 1% in reading proficiency, less than 1% of an already low proficiency rate for third graders in Detroit.
That's not enough.
I went to the first, we had this conversation on Thursday, Brother Johnson. I went to the first school board meeting in Detroit after the release of the M-STEP. You would have thought they won a goddamn Super Bowl. They talking about a less than 1% increase. They're celebrating that. But that speaks, and this when it gets back to the parents and the taxpayers. If you're not holding them accountable, they get away with pulling wool over your eyes because how many parents know how to read and understand the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores or M-STEP scores? Not many parents, even though the information is sent home, but how many parents know how to read that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. They're able to, at the end of the day, and I say this all the time with a lot of things, organizations, the church, politics, the key to the success of these failing school districts and these pathetic superintendents and school boards, you keep them dumb, you can control them.
Yeah.
And that's how they control the parents, because they do not send a blueprint on how to read the M-STEP scores. All they send is that your daughter or your son is not proficient. Well, okay, that's not telling me where they're not proficient at. And then Detroit does a good job of bragging about success that's really failure, but they never talk about the failure. When I went in on DPS when they were bragging about the pathetic increase. I had the head of communications trying to go back and forth with me on social media. I'm like, lady, explain to the people. You want to talk about the very low percentage of those that are proficient. Explain to people the low percentage that are not advanced. That's the number that should matter. Explain to the people that you still have 87.8% not proficient. So to talk about the proficiency rate and not talk about the non-proficient rate, because we have to understand the class of 27 entered ninth grade in the fall of 2023 with only 5% of eighth graders proficient in reading. A year from now, that 95% will only probably decrease to no more than 85%, which means that you only have 15% of graduating seniors in the class of 27 going out into the real world. And all they care about is bragging about the graduation rate. Even though there are numerous statistics, numerous reports, numerous studies that constantly shows that a minimum of 70% of graduating students in the city of Detroit, River Rouge, Benton Harbor, which at one period of time, Benton Harbor, a 3-year period of time, did not have a single 11th grader qualify minimally on the SAT scores to be admitted into college. But again, that's the village fault, because the village continued to be quiet and not raise hell. That's the village fault.
True.
So with that being said, you're going to comment on Brother Johnson, but also I want you to comment on this current comment that's on the screen, if you could read it.
Sure enough. I'll just say first, it's definitely the village's fault, because the village is disorganized, the village is separated, and the village is divided. To go from there, okay. New comment. Thanks from Miss Sheila. Thanks, sir, for your holistic approach to educate our babies. You must have a partnership with the parents. And I believe that this is a perfect segue into what I was going to say, because going back to Coach D, I've been to, I attended Bates Academy. I also attended Cornerstone. But due to circumstances that I did not see happening, right, or I'm sure my mother didn't either, I went to some neighborhood schools as well, such as Cooley High. I also went to Holcomb Elementary, which is now shut down. Well, I guess Holcomb and Cooley are now shut down. But I could see the disparaging differences in students at both schools, right, at both institutions. You had those in whom were invested and had their parents invested, and then you had those in whom were not, right? And I think that we can talk about the long list of things, from the food that's being given to the lack of accountability. But I think that what we have to change our focus from in this day and age, because time is of the essence, is that we need to shift towards the solution, which I propose, and I believe that that's leadership. Leadership has to come through and guide the people back to where we need to be as a whole, as a collective, and as a unit, to whereas we can start marching forward and making progress in ways that we haven't over the last 50 years. Because it's clear and it's evident from just as what Brittany Alexis is saying, I think parents need a system just as much as children do. Yeah. Schools could play a bigger role in providing structure, tools, and guidance that support the whole family and not just the students. Thank you so very much, Brittany, for saying that, because again, you can't have one without the other, right? Yin and yang theory here. Your parents can't enforce something that they have no knowledge or no clue about, right? And so therefore, these students, these children, they're being led astray because, again, there is no leadership coming in telling the parents, hey, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, come on down here to this hall, come on down here to so-and-so's, Brother Johnson's house. We all meeting in the basement. We're going to have children upstairs doing homework. We're going to have parents downstairs learning financial literacy. There needs to be systems that we put in place today in order to make our future better tomorrow.
Great comment, Brother Johnson. And then Mr. 1213, there are a couple of churches in the city that had SOAR programs. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. 1213, I think SOAR is led and ran by a brother. I forget his name. His name escapes me, but he also wanted to, and I think we've had this conversation, Dr. Scott. I am a firm believer that one of the most successful things that can happen if people were to really invest time, energy, and a passion for it, we have Frederick Douglass Academy for young men that's doing well, even in light of the small amount of enrollment. If they were to invest, and I think Marygrove College, when it closed down, would have been a perfect place for this. An all-male border school in Detroit, I think, would have been one of the most successful things to have ever happened in this city. And that's where I think we miss. Even Kwame Kilpatrick, he even suggested that the old boat club at Belle Isle be turned into a border school for males, for black males.
I love that. I love and also the comments about us coming up with solutions instead of continuing to talk about the challenge. And I think as men in particular, we have to get there even more so than our women, because they are often the single parents who are left responsible for the children. So black men have to step up. We have to be more involved in our school system. Sometimes it's a little different when a man comes up and talks to the school administrators as opposed to a woman. And so, we got a lot of work to do within our communities. And, I, for one, am one who believes in, we are the change that we are looking for.
And Brother Johnson spoke to that, Dr. Scott, because what we need is what you just spoke about. But what we lack is understanding those last 5 letters of the word community, which is UNITY. We lack the unity in the community to make a difference. If we could get past worrying about who's the chief, who's the Indians, who's going to be, at the forefront of leading something, and just understand it's about working together for a common goal, working together for a common good, we can accomplish everything that we're talking about right now. And that's where the solution lies. But we have to get past the jealousy, the bickering. I mean, I'm a member of fraternity. I don't have no problem telling this story. My last meeting on June 10th, 2017, as the president of the chapter in Detroit, I said to these men, we often talk about how women are catty. I said, I didn't know from month to month if I was coming before a fraternity or a sorority based on the cattiness of these brothers. And to this day, that's one of the reasons why I'm no longer active. I just can't stand when people cannot think for themselves. I cannot stand when people go along to get along. And I cannot stand people that do not hold others accountable. When holding people accountable, it's par for the course. I don't roll like that. Walk it like I talk it. I don't kowtow. I don't kiss ass. My father, who was a West Indian, he told us when we were very young, another man puts his pants on the same way as you. Do not be an ass kisser. I think I was 12 years old when he said that. Only thing I'm kissing is a female. I'm damn sure not kissing another black man's ass just to be liked.
Hey.
Hey, I'm right there. When you preach it to the choir, brother.
Yeah, I acquiesce with that statement, King.
Yes,
Thank you, to Mary. She's a regular viewer too. Good evening, Kings, and we appreciate that because we don't get the type of acknowledgement that we often deserve. So thank you, to Mary. I always look forward to you joining the podcast every week, and that comment is one that I'm sure all of the brothers on this platform will appreciate you saying. Good point. Another, how is it children can't read when in the midst of them having cell phones, or they are not texting? Well, no, actually, Tamari, have you read some of these texts that they send each other? It's not. Yeah. It's not English. It's definitely not the King's English. But you bring up a good point, Tamari, because these iPhones and these telephones, be it iPhone or Android, are $1,000 computers they have right at their disposal. But they would rather use them to make TikTok videos as opposed to gaining knowledge. Handheld computer don't get any better than that, right at their fingertips. And they're not using it the way they should be using it. But let me get some of these comments because we actually are running out of time. So I'm going to get to some of the comments because people took the time out of their schedule to join us this evening. Exposure is everything. Thanks, brothers. That's from Miss Sheila, regular viewer. Miss Sheila has another comment as it relates to 18 in the chat for free, share. And, you know, the platform, the conversation can be shared even after the live broadcast. So I would appreciate people also share it after we are off the air. It's available within 15 minutes to share the whole live conversation that will be recorded. To Mary, reading, math, science should be fun. Whatever happened to academic games? Well, they got Tech Town Detroit, Tech Town Saturdays, whatever they call that event.
Still probably
I guess
having
That's
that
many
Banks.
games in the city.
Yeah,
I guess that's their reading. Greetings from Las Vegas. Well, wow, thanks, Nehemiah, for joining us all the way from Las Vegas. You know, appreciate you taking the time in that 3-hour time difference to find this evening hours program to be worth your time. Appreciate you. The new math, yeah, that's a real thing, Miss Brittany. It is sad.
Horrible.
1 + 1, you know, and it's funny because people always want to say if you don't vote for one person, you didn't have intent on voting for either person. Last I checked, 0 + 0 = 0. But for some reason, depending on how people lean, they see one as a winner, even though I've never understood, you know, how they can come up with that. And then there's a comment from Dorian Denard. Appreciate you, Dorian. Greetings, Eric and the council. Appreciate you, and they appreciate you taking the time for checking us out and engaging in a comment and saying hello. Lisa from out in your neck of the woods, Nate. There is an ethnic studies bill that was introduced called Teach Michigan History Bill. It will make ethnic studies a graduation requirement. 22 states have a bill or a bill on the table. I'm going to have to look more into that, Lisa. Thanks for sharing that information.
Mm-hmm.
Then Dorian Denard has, well, I saw it briefly, but I think when it comes up, it's going to have a different connotation, which I thought these aren't these aren't parents. They're sperm donors and incubators of children. The parents can't read either. Yeah, you're right. We talked about that, Denard, and that's one of the unfortunate things. And I'm running out of time, so a lot of the comments I will not be able to get to due to the fact that we're out of time. And you can go back and when I share the broadcast as a recording, you can go back and check it out. But I do want to thank everyone for taking time out of their schedule for joining us. Next week, I'll be on at 7 o'clock as opposed to 8:30 because I got to be ready for my U of M Wolverines to get that ship next Monday. So hopefully they will. I'll go around the table and give you all an opportunity to give a 30-second closing remarks. And I start with you, Brother Johnson, then Nate, then Coach D, and then I end up with my co-host, Dr. Scott, giving his final remarks.
All right. Well, I would just say thank you again. It's truly been an honor and a pleasure to be here on the podcast with you gentlemen tonight. I feel as if this is a great conversation that I would love to be a part of again, and more importantly, work with you all to push forward a solution in which actually has impact. So thank you again, and till next time.
It'll be a next time, Brother Johnson, because I was more impressed and the engaging conversation we had this past Thursday. So there will definitely be a next time. But before you speak, Nate, since you in a school district, this is one of the comments that Mr. 1213, I guess he feel they need to bring a hatchet man into DPS. A grassroots person like you, Eric, need to be superintendent of DPS, not an outsider like Vidi. If that were to happen, the first person I would fire would be Vidi. So thank you, Mr. 1213. Go ahead with your comments, Nate. Your final comment.
Well, I just want to say the answer: finding purpose and building relationships in the classroom. That's the goal, the vision, being able to put it all together, be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem.
That was good. Well, Goal Set Holistic is the company. Goal, like setting a goal, goalset.shop. That's where you can look up my company. I think that we really need to focus a lot more on developing some small brand groups that have a strong brain bank. It doesn't have to be a lot to really get things going. I mean, 5, 10 people can make a big change, and because a lot of people are detached, man, and they just don't know this thing is happening. They hear it, but they don't feel it. I mean, we feel it, obviously, we're on here, but a lot of people don't, and we have to develop some strategies to, I mean, things that we probably haven't come up with yet in groups to attack this issue.
And before you speak, Dr. Scott, thank you, Coach D. Before you speak, one of the viewers is asking that you all share your contacts. And I think you do have the capability to do that in the chat.
Oh, okay.
If you can do that, if you can type it in. If not, I'll start with Coach D to get your contact information with regards to your company. You just shout it out. And
yeah.
well, shout out slowly because I'll type it in the chat as you're saying it.
Okay. And it's goal set, as in setting a goal .shop. That's my that is the actual website. You can reach
You
me
say
at
.shop, SHOP?
and you can reach me at da.hines HINES at cfpo.us. That's my personal email. And I can leave my number as well. 313.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
313
673 6539. Appreciate that.
You all should be able to see it. Did you see it? You see it in the chat on the right?
Yep.
All right, and then I'll go back to you. Well, I'll let Dr. Scott give his final comment. Then I'll come back to you, Brother Johnson and Nate, to get your contact information and put into the chat.
Yep. You can reach me at Dr. Samino Scott. That's SAMINOSCOTT.com. And man, I'm just thankful to be able to be a part of this conversation with a group of Black men. You know, as we wrap up, March is Reading Month, Literacy Month. The one thing we can't lose sight of is the fact that our math proficiency in our schools are even worse than our literacy numbers. And so, with the development of AI, I think we're at a critical state where we can't afford to allow our kids to continue to graduate lacking proficiency in math and reading. And so we have to really begin to come up with some solutions, and Black men have to be a part of that. And I'm just thankful to be able to once again be a part of this conversation with you gentlemen today.
Me too. Thanks, bro.
Yeah.
All right, back to you, Dr. Not Doctor. Hold on, Brother Johnson. You could talk about your final comment before you give me your information. I got to retype Dr. Samino Scott information in.
Yep.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I think that definitely this is the right space and right place for us to build. We all are definitely involved, and more importantly, driven to see action. So let's carry this conversation beyond conversation and make some impact. With that being said, the best way to reach me would be either by phone or by email. Phone number is 248-558-9212. Outside of that, email would just be my last name, then first name. Or you know what? No, let's not do that. Let's do another bedtime story at gmail.com. I'll just say that that's the Gmail. I have a business email as well, but my business is titled Another Bedtime Story, and it's actually it's a media production company in which our first show that we're producing right now, that we have in production, is centered around early childhood education and strictly in the area of literacy. So definitely look for that to be coming, say, late summer at the latest, late summer.
All right. And Nate, your contact information?
Yeah, you can reach me at thinkaplusfoundation.com.
Hold on 1 second. You say think A+?
Yep. Foundation.com. And we're building right now. We're working on producing a curriculum for Rap to Read.
All right, and I'll send this recording now later on, probably within the next hour, to all three of you. All four of you, and you can share with your network. And ask the viewers that were watching and the commenters, and these comments came from YouTube. I'm not on Facebook Live at the same time as airing, so comments are on there as well. So again, I want to thank all four of you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Appreciate you, love you, brothers, and we will do this again without a doubt. And just so everyone knows, next week the conversation will center on teachers and getting their perspective on why the educational system is the way it is. And then 2 weeks from today, the conversation will center on having all students as my guests. And that would be on that would be on April the 13th, April 6th, teachers, April 13th, students. So I'm looking forward to both, but definitely looking forward to hearing from the students.
Oh, yeah. All right. Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate
you, bro.
No doubt. Go Blue. And I gotta rub it in with Nate. He an Alabama fan, so go Blue.
Yeah, man. Hey, but I picked Michigan to win it all, so.
You don't say that too loud. People in Alabama get this too. So when you go back down there, you gonna have a problem.
Nah, they good.
All right. Thanks. Good night, brothers.
All right.
Enjoy. Appreciate
it.
Yeah. All right, Eric. Appreciate you, brother.
Oh, likewise. Appreciate you. Thanks.
Yep.